Hey, how you doing? It's me. I'm recording this video before any announcement happens, so I have no fucking clue what they announced today. So, yeah, insert thing here. Hey, how about that thing they just announced today? Crazy that they're coming out with this new thing. That's fucking wild. No, but seriously, if it's Diamond Pro remakes, I'm gonna be fucking pissed. Yo, who the fuck is Matt CMG? What's cracking, everyone? It me, Matt CMG, and if I'm not a lazy pile of subhuman shit and this video is coming out on the day that it's supposed to, then happy Pokemon Day. On this day, 25 years ago, Pokemon Red and Green were released in Japan, and 2.5 decades later, the series is still going strong. As most long-running series tend to do, the Pokemon series has ebbed and flowed over the years, with some games being these timeless classics, and others not so much. While the series hasn't been too great in the past few years, I have massive problems with some of the new games, and I'll get into that in a big video next month. But today, I wanted to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane and look back at what I believe to be the best era of Pokemon so far. Now, this isn't to say that every other era is inherently worse, but what I'm about to talk about today is what I believe to be Pokemon at its peak, and how we may never get something like that era ever again. So smash that motherfucking like button, let's get weird, let's get wild, and let's celebrate Pokemon Day by taking a look back at the best era of Pokemon. So, what era is the best, you may ask? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the DS era of Pokemon, consisting of the Generation 4 and Generation 5 games. There are a few reasons why I believe this to be the best era of Pokemon, aside from nostalgia, because I did in fact grow up with these two generations, so there's a little bit of a bias here. Just saying. My first main reason is that this is the first time that Pokemon put a big emphasis on connectivity. Generation 4 saw the introduction of online to the series, with things like Wi-Fi battles and the GTS making their debut here and sticking with the series from then on. But when I say connectivity, I mean it in a more general sense. For example, this was also the first time where transferring your Pokemon from one generation to the next became a thing. In case you didn't have a DS growing up, the original and light models of the system were backwards compatible with the Game Boy Advance, meaning you were able to play GBA games on it straight from the cartridge. If you had a Gen 4 game in the DS slot and a Gen 3 game in the Game Boy slot, there was stuff you could do in-game that you couldn't do before. This worked by the DS reading the data within the GBA slot while the DS game was running. This was the only way for you to transfer Pokemon from the Gen 3 games to the Gen 4 games via the PAL Park, and in the Gen 4 games, the game you have in the Game Boy slot can affect which Pokemon can appear in the wild. For instance, Ursaring isn't catchable in Sinnoh normally, but if you have Pokemon Emerald in your Game Boy slot, you can now find Ursaring at Lake Acuity. This is also the case for many other Pokemon that you can't normally catch in the Sinnoh region. This was something that they got rid of for Heart Gold and Soul Silver, likely because the DSi was on its way in and it didn't have a Game Boy slot, making what is now known as the dongle method impossible. Unless you have an original DS or a DS Lite, this is something that you can't really do anymore, and it's something that was never really done since, at least not in the same way, but we'll get to that later. The closest thing to this was Black 2 and White 2's Unova Link feature. Unova Link was a feature that allowed players to connect Black 2 and White 2 with other entries in the series, and was made up of three main components. The first was the Memory Link, which allowed you to send data from Black and White 1 to Black and White 2 in order to unlock post-game cutscenes that bridge the gap between the two games. This was done via the DS download feature that is present on the entire DS family of systems, so you do need a second system in order to do this, but regardless, it's pretty cool. Essentially what happens is that Black 2 and White 2 reach the save data from Black and White 1, and depending on how far you are in both games, you will unlock flashbacks to characters that appear throughout the story and what happened to them in between the games. You also get access to some neat little odds and ends in there like the player's room, but I think the coolest of these is that you can catch N's Pokemon. After you see all of the flashbacks, on certain routes there's a chance you can encounter one of N's Pokemon, the same ones that he used in Black and White when you battle him, denoted by this unique particle effect that they have when they're sent out. These Pokemon are catchable, and when you catch them, you can see that their original trainer is N, they have max friendship, and they have 30 IVs in every stat. They also keep their particle effect after you catch them, but it only works in Black 2 and White 2, doesn't work if you transfer them up. The second component of the Unova Link is the Key Link. This one is pretty simple, but if you link your copy of Black 2 and White 2 with another player's copy of Black 2 and White 2, you could unlock keys. These keys have a few uses, and one of the coolest and most desirable of them is that they unlock difficulty options. This was the first and only time anything like this has ever been done in the Pokemon series, and though I myself haven't played through Black 2 and White 2 on challenge mode yet, it gives those games massive replayability and a genuine challenge for the more experienced players. Another interesting use for the Key Link is the Town Key and the Tree Hollow Key, which you obtain after completing the Black Tower or White Tree Hollow, depending on which version you're playing. If you use the Key Link with the opposite version of the game, you can access the other area that would otherwise be version exclusive. Again, this is the only time that something like this has been done in the series, and it honestly seems like the first step Pokemon has taken towards version exclusivity not really mattering anymore. The last part of the Key Link is arguably the most tedious, and that is the Regikeys. Regirock is catchable in both Black 2 and White 2, however Regice is exclusive to White 2 with Registeel exclusive to Black 2. Upon catching your version exclusive Regi, you obtain either the Iron Key or the Iceberg Key, and you can trade these keys to gain access to the Reggie you don't have, after which you can catch Regigigas. It's the least cool of the keys for me, but it's still kinda cool. The last part of the Unova Link is the Nintendo 3DS Link, which, as the name suggests, only works on the 3DS. What this feature does is it allows you to transfer Pokemon from the 3DS exclusive Pokemon Dream Radar game to your copy of Black and White 2. Every Pokemon that you transfer this way will have its hidden ability, which at the time was known as the Dream World ability, and at that time, this was the only way to get some of these Pokemon with these abilities. This is also true for the legendary Pokemon obtainable in the game, including the Therian forms of the Genie Trio, as well as Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Ho-Oh, and Lugia. What's cool about those 5 kinda circles back to the dual slot thing from last gen. The legendary Pokemon that you get depends on what game you have in your 3DS. If you have Pokemon Pearl inserted, then you'll find Palkia. If you use Heart Gold, you'll find Ho-Oh, etc. However, Pokemon Dream Radar wasn't the only time you could transfer rare Pokemon from a spin-off to your main game, as you could also do this with Pokemon Battle Revolution on the Wii. Now let me tell you youngins something. Back in my day, if you wanted to see your Pokemon in 3D, you had to get a separate console game for that. Pokemon Battle Revolution was basically just a battle simulator for the Gen 4 game. Upon beating the game, you would be given the opportunity to transfer a Surfing Pikachu to your Gen 4 game. Alongside that, there were also codes you could put in to get a special Electivire and Magmortar from the game as well. You could obtain these Pokemon as many times as you want on as many save files as you want, and even today, the Poketopia Surfing Pikachu is considered a collector's item, albeit not a very rare one. Having a Pikachu with Surf isn't much of a rarity these days, as it once was thanks to Sword and Shield letting Pikachu learn it through TM, but it's still nice to know where it came from is pretty unique. However, when it comes to rarity, let's look to the Pokemon Ranger series and how they connect with the Gen 4 games. In all 3 of the Pokemon Ranger games, there was a downloadable event where you could download a mission involving a Manaphy egg, and upon completion of that mission, you could send that Manaphy egg to any of the Gen 4 games. The thing that makes this really interesting is that this makes Manaphy one of the rarest Pokemon out there, since you could only obtain and transfer 1 Manaphy per copy of Pokemon Ranger game, and once you transferred it, you could not do it again, even if you restart your save file. This means that there is only a finite amount of legitimate Manaphy out there in the world. Additionally, since for some of the Ranger games the Manaphy mission was a downloadable event, there isn't any legitimate way to access it anymore without hacking the game. However, the DNS method is arguably not cheating, since all it's doing is tricking the game into thinking the event is still active, and the 1 Manaphy per save file rule still applies, so I would say that it's legit, just not what the devs were intending. Similarly to Manaphy, the only way to legitimately obtain Mew in Generation 4 was through a spin-off, My Pokemon Ranch, for the Wii. This was a WiiWare game that isn't available anymore by regular means, but can still be accessed through Homebrew. If you transfer 1,000 Pokemon from any of the Sinnoh games, you will be given a Mew. You can also get a Phione from this game as well, and that's technically the rarer way to get it, since you could easily just breed Manaphy, but it's still pretty cool. These have all been examples of how, at the time, Pokemon spin-offs were all tied to the main series in some way. Chances are, if you had a Pokemon spin-off, there was something in it that you can send to the main games as a little reward. Today, this still happens, but to a much lesser extent, with Pokemon Go being the only recent example of a spin-off connecting to the main games like this. And it's kind of ironic because there seem to be way more spin-offs now than there were back then. This kind of thing was all over Generations 4 and 5, and something like this even happens between the 2 generations themselves. Back in 2011, to promote the release of the Zoroark movie, there was a special distribution where you could obtain a Celebi in your Gen 4 games. When that specific Celebi was transferred up to Black and White, there was an event you could do where you'd obtain a Zorua. 3 similar events were also done in this way, with shiny forms of the legendary beasts being given away that allow you to catch a wild Zoroark. This is the only way to legitimately obtain Zorua, and by extension Zoroark, in Black and White 1. You know, a new Pokemon that is only obtainable by transferring an old Pokemon from the old generation. And though at the time this would have been something that very tedious for completionists, it was still a cool way to make the past generations relevant. Part of the reason for why this is so cool to me is that even though we were well into a new generation by that point, they were still supporting the previous generations and finding a way to make them compatible, which is something that doesn't really happen anymore outside of transfers. And speaking of events, the second reason why this is Pokemon's best era were the events and distributions that occurred. Pokemon distributions and events aren't new by any means, with the very first one being to obtain Mew in Generation 1, and they weren't always the most interesting during this time. That title I think goes to Generation 3's Eon Ticket, but I think that the Gens 4 and 5 events helped the entire Pokemon franchise feel connected in a way that I don't think has since been replicated. Generation 4 had a slew of event Pokemon over the years, many of which involving the anime. There was the Ash's Pikachu Toys R Us distribution, where players could receive a Pikachu with the same moveset as Ash's Pikachu in the Diamond and Pearl series, and later in Black and White where there would be another with his Best Wishes moveset. These were long before the Ash Cat Pikachu we know today, and are a really obscure Pokemon to add to your collection, I think. To tie in with the Darkrai movie, there was an event where the player could obtain a Darkrai with its original trainer reading, Alamos. This is a reference to Alamos Town from the Darkrai movie, which is exclusive exclusive to the anime. Similar events were also done with Shaman, Regigigas, and Arceus for their movies, but that's kind of a common practice at this point, nothing really special about those. What is special, however, was the Pikachu-colored Pichu event in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. This was just a shiny Pikachu that was given away only to Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, but when traded to Heart Gold and Soul Silver and taken to Ilex Forest, the player would then obtain the spiky-eared Pichu, a special Pichu that can evolve and has a little spike on its ear. It's kind of cute. This thing was like a mythical, the way it was treated. This is common knowledge at this point, but this is one of the few Pokemon that has never been able to be transferred outside of its debut generation. This thing is forever locked to Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Maybe someday we'll be able to see it make a return, but that doesn't seem very likely. Speaking of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, back before we had Pokemon Go, back before smartphones were even really a thing, I know, kinda hard to imagine for you fucking youngins out there, but back then, if we wanted to take our Pokemon with us and we couldn't bring our entire DS, we had this little fucking guy. The Pokewalker. All this thing was a Tamagotchi mixed with a pedometer where you could send Pokemon from Heart Gold and Soul Silver to the Pokewalker, and once inside you could catch wild Pokemon, and if you participated in certain events, could even get some rare Pokemon out of it. Specifically, Pokemon not found in the Generation 4 games. One of these Pokemon that I always had my eye on was the Torchic that was catchable in the event-only sightseeing route, but I was unfortunately unable to get that event. What's interesting about the Pokewalker is that these things have an in-game currency called Watts. These were previously used in the Pokemon Pikachu virtual pets, and would later make a return in the main series in Sword and Shield. I mean, I think it's kind of crazy how they took a little stupid peripheral from the DS era and repurposed parts of it in the modern day. The Pokewalker? Kinda fucking influential. Moving on to Generation 5, this was where events started to really get cool. The first major event Pokemon for Gen 5 was Victini, but the way the event worked made it feel way more special than it actually is. Typically, when you receive an event Pokemon, some guy at the Pokemon Center just kinda gives it to you, but here they actually give you the Liberty Pass. The Liberty Pass allows you to go to Liberty Island, a not-so-subtle reference to the Statue of Liberty, where there would be a short story involving Team Plasma and the mythical Pokemon Victini. You had to actually catch this thing in battle, and the story around it made it feel like a truly legendary encounter. There's also this aura of mystery around Victini, with Professor Juniper telling the player that it's registered as number 0 in the Unova Pokedex because it was just that special of a Pokemon without much else reason given. Similar in-game events were also associated with the other mythical Pokemon of this generation. The Keldeo event allowed you to see a really cool cutscene with the Swords of Justice where you learn their history. The Meloetta event is kind of lame, and the Genesect event gives you the various drives after learning about how Team Plasma created it. A lot of these events were things that you kind of had to go out of your way to do, which was kind of neat. The coolest part about old event Pokemon to me, though, is that you had to actually go places to get them. Nowadays we have direct download codes that you don't even need to leave your house for, but back in the DS era, and a little bit before, you would only be able to get these events by going to whatever store happened to have the promotion, bringing your DS inside, and downloading it there. There were many times as a kid where I would ask my mom to take me to Toys R Us or GameStop just to get a cool event Pokemon that I had heard about online, because that was the only way to get them. These local events don't really happen anymore, and it's kinda cringe that they don't do them like that. The only times where local download events like this still happen are at Pokemon Center stores during events, or at something like the World Championships or something where they usually give away a special Pikachu or something like that. Another really interesting way to obtain some cool event Pokemon were the Pokemon Global Link distributions during Generation 5. The Pokemon Global Link, for those who don't know, was an online service on Pokemon's website that ran from Gen 5 to Gen 7, with its intent being to offer the online features that weren't already built into the games. This included stuff like a trainer profile, logs of which Pokemon you've traded through the GTS, a friends list, special skins for your Sea Gear, as well as battle rankings for the online ladder. All of that was cool for the time, but it isn't really necessary in Generation 8 since that stuff is kind of already built into the game, or something more permanent like Pokemon Home exists for that same purpose. However, the cool thing about the Pokemon Global Link was that there would be occasional distributions of specific Pokemon. Sometimes they would be specific Pokemon to coincide with a specific event, such as a Blissey for Christmas or a Krogunk for the release of a new Dream World area. Other times they would be available by registering certain Pokemon products in the Global Link, but occasionally they would let users vote on which Pokemon would be distributed, which resulted in distributions for both Arceus and Rayquaza, the latter of which was only available in Korea. Low-key, these might be some of the rarest Pokemon out there since the Global Link wasn't that widely used in Gen 5, and even today, I don't think there's any fan-made version of the service like we have for other Pokemon online services. Yeah, there are a bunch of other odds and ends that make this era of Pokemon great, and this one is pretty nostalgic for me, but the Pokemon website used to fucking slap. Back during Generation 4, I would go to the Pokemon website all the time for, you know, God knows why, and one thing that really stuck out to me about it that likely shaped my taste today was that Pokemon.com used to have a music feature. On the old Pokemon website, there used to be this button in the top right corner that would play a bunch of songs from the Pokemon anime. All it would really do was play like the first 30 seconds or so of each song from the Pokemon X album, but this was basically how I got into Pokemon music. Looking back on the Pokemon website as a whole, I think they did a really good job back in the day of making the website very kid-friendly. For every new big game release, they would redesign the entire site. There used to be like Flash games, there's the aforementioned music player. The whole site was designed to look like a Pokedex. It was just a fun place to go when you were a kid, but now it's just this white background with these modular little apps with nothing but news in them. It just feels corporate and soulless, and I kind of feel bad for Pokemon fans growing up today who don't really have little things like the Pokemon website. Or my next topic, the rumors. When Generations 4 and 5 were coming out, the internet was right in the middle of the process of growing to what it is today, and as a result, this made the rumor mill for Generations 4 and 5 fucking insane. The DS era was the last time that rumors like these really circulated, since nobody was really fact-checking them at the time. Generations 1 through 3 had rumors, of course, but it was Gens 4 and 5 where we saw people get a little bit more creative with them, and that's due in large part to the internet. It was extremely common back then to look up how to get X Pokemon in Pearl or something like that and get videos of people like recording their DS with a fucking potato camera, clearly using an action replay, or in the event that you found an actual good quality video, it was always some ROM hack or an emulator where they clearly hacked it. Like, y'all remember that one video where Munching Orange showed you how to get Rayquaza in black and white, where you get the fucking lava cookie, drop it in the ocean, and then ring the bell in the fucking tower 3 times, and then Rayquaza comes out? I know now that it was a ROM hack, but when I saw it as a kid, I thought that shit was real, and I followed the steps, and was subsequently disappointed. Thanks for lying to me, Munching Orange. Fuck you. You know, combine all of that with the typical playground rumors you'd have amongst your friends, and you'd have an insane rumor mill for these games to a much bigger extent than we had seen in earlier generations. By the time Generation 6 rolled around, people got pretty good at identifying fake shit, and TBCI started officially revealing everything in the games before release, so a lot of rumors were quickly debunked. While word of mouth stuff still circulates as recently as Gen 8, it's not really as fun anymore because you can easily just fact check it. And, you know, at best, we get like a week after the games come out where rumors and new discoveries start coming in before everybody kind of just falls in line and accepts what's real and what isn't. I really miss Pokemon rumors because they made the series feel magical, and that's not something that really happens anymore. And Gen 5 was really the last time it happened. So I really don't know what the fuck the point of this video is, but I know what the point of this video isn't. The point of this video was not to say, you know, old thing good, new thing bad. Thing I grew up with better than new thing. That was not my intent here. The purpose of this video was to reminisce on some of the lesser talked about aspects of the Pokemon series and what made the era in which they existed one of the most memorable, at least for me. You know, there's a reason people hold Generations 4 and 5 in such high regard, and it's because they are these great, timeless games that don't need fucking remakes, but alongside being great games, also had a lot to offer outside of the games. Things where you could only have obtained or experienced them if you were there for it. Ultimately, I think that's what Pokemon's all about. It's not about which game or which generation is, you know, objectively the best in terms of content and features, but rather the memories you create with those games regardless of quality. You know, I know this entire video is basically just me glorifying Generations 4 and 5 because obviously I have very fond memories of those generations, but I also have fond memories of Generation 6 and even 7 to some degree, even though those games weren't as good and they came out, you know, later in my life. You know, I hope that on this 25th anniversary of Pokemon, we can all kind of come together as Pokemon fans, put our differences aside, put aside the controversies and all the bullshit, and just enjoy Pokemon for one day. I've been Matt CMG, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test, to train them is my cause. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide. Each Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em, it's you and me. I know it's my destiny. Pokemon, oh, you're my best friend in a world we must defend. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em, our hearts are true. Our courage will pull us through. You teach me and I'll teach you. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all, gotta catch 'em all. Yeah. Every challenge along the way, with courage I will face. I will battle every day to claim my rightful place. Come with me, the time is right. There's no better team. Arm in arm, we'll win the fight. It's always been our dream. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. It's you and me. I know it's my destiny. Pokemon, oh, you're my best friend in a world we must defend. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. A heart so true, our courage will pull us through. You teach me and I'll teach you. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all, gotta catch 'em all. Gotta catch 'em all. Gotta catch 'em all. Gotta catch 'em all. Yeah. We'll wait on that, I think. A little bit early, maybe, perhaps. I don't know. Who gives a fuck? It's just shit. It's terrible. Poggers, though. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. It's you and me. I know it's my destiny. Pokemon, oh, you're my best friend in a world we must defend. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. A heart so true, our courage will pull us through. You teach me and I'll teach you. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. Gotta catch 'em all. Pokemon.